of college football and the really great columnist, national columnist Ross Dellenger, Yahoo Sports, joins us on 365 Sports. Ross, thanks for your time. So this format that we're trying to get to in college football with the 12 teams and more, and I saw the note about some things that Kirk Schulz wants some promises. Is he annoying everybody, but also yet doing his job to protect he and also Washington State, Oregon State?
Well, I think that's probably a good way to put it. Actually, he probably is representing in a way his constituents, right? And he is requesting, or he's at least made a proposal to conference commissioners and presidents on the CFB board to grant him as in his league, the Pac-12 or the Pac-2, soon enough, some guarantees in order to get his vote for a format change. So he made that proposal a few weeks ago. Not sure of the current situation with that proposal, where it stands, but it certainly received some pushback from commissioners. I don't expect them to guarantee the Pac-12 or any other league anything beyond 2025, and that's kind of was really the main part of my story Sunday on the CFP is that there's nothing beyond 25 right now. There's no contractual playoff at all. There's no agreement. There's no TV deal. The only thing that binds the 10 FBS leagues and Notre Dame together when it comes to the CFP is the media deal with ESPN, which the last year is 2025. There's nothing signed and no agreement, although they're negotiating with ESPN and other partners for an extension. It hasn't happened yet. So that's what everybody should keep in mind. There's no agreement right now. And the Big Ten and SEC continue to grab, more and more control, and as they grab more and more teams, right, during realignment. And so it's an interesting situation right now here in Dallas at CFP meetings where Kirk Schulz and his proposal in the future format and, more importantly, the future revenue distribution model is certainly under examination.
Ross, did what the SEC and Big Ten announced last week with this advisory committee about whatever the future is of college football, was that a shot across the bow, a warning shot, or was that, they just haven't been heard from in a while?
Well, I think that certain people in college athletics are taking it as a warning shot and as a initial step into a more maybe a bigger, more significant relationship going forward in the future with the Big Ten and the SEC when it comes to the future of college football specifically, but college athletics. I certainly think a lot of people are taking it as that. The Big Ten and SEC commissioners at least want everybody to know that it's just right now an advisory committee, but this in all likelihood is a step more in the direction of them in their relationship, these two leagues, in running or steering the future of college sports, and that includes maybe off the field with the advisory committee, maybe coming up with things for athlete compensation models in the future and settling some of this litigation, but also on the field, right, with the CFP and the format and the NCAA basketball tournament as well.
Ross, what do you think an acceptable outcome for Kirk Schulz would be? Because I'm sure he's not foolish enough to think that he's going to get everything he wants, but there's got to be some middle ground that he would settle for.
Yeah, I'd imagine there is, and I had kind of heard that there was going to be, maybe a different proposal from him offered at some point, maybe here at the meetings it's being discussed. Maybe it's a less ambitious proposal. Because certainly the first one, right, wasn't going to happen. And, just to kind of recap all this for your listeners, because it has gotten a little complicated. It may be misunderstood a little bit, but the CFP, approved it a year and a half ago, I guess now, approved an expansion to 12 teams starting this year. And it was a 6+6 model, 6 automatic qualifiers for the highest ranked conference champions and 6 at-large spots for the next highest ranked teams. And what everybody wants to do, given the Pac-12's implosion, basically, of one fewer FBS league, is to go to a 5+7 model instead of 6+6. So you'd have 5 automatic qualifiers for conference champions, and you would have one more at large, 7 at large spots. And you need unanimity across the board. And so you need Kirk Schulz's vote to make that happen. And that's kind of the situation. And I think a lot of people thought during the national championship game when the CFP board met that they would approve the move to a 5+7. But again, Kirk Schulz is delaying it. And you know what? Again, he's probably doing something that's for his constituents, for his representative conference, and for the future of his conference. So you can kind of understand that, but you can also understand why it received pretty loud and emphatic pushback to guarantee the Pac-2 / Pac-12 or any kind of future Pac-12 voting rights or revenue distribution beyond the end of the current term in 2025.
Yeah, it's simple but complicated, and yet he's fighting for his constituents. As you mentioned, there's 2 of them. Is it to a point where that he could hurt himself even if they survive the short term, that Washington State, Oregon State, and with the power of the others in college football, could hurt himself in the future, not now?
Well, I mean, certainly if he doesn't budge,
yeah.
and it stays for these next 2 years as a 6+6, you could see some kind of backlash. If it stays as a 6+6 with 9 FBS conferences, that would mean 2 Group of 5 conference champions get in every year. You can imagine the original intent of the playoff was 1 Group of 5 champion gets in basically every year. So this would mean 2. So again, you could imagine that a 9-4, 10-3 Group of 5 champion would be in automatically and would pass up a 10-2 SEC team, or a 10-2 Big 12 team, a 9-3 maybe even Big 10 team. So there would be some real issues with that. But Kirk has the power in a lot of ways to maybe do that, to have that done. And if that's the case, you would probably see some retribution from the other leagues. You might see that beyond 2025, because again, no contract, no agreement beyond 2025 on the playoff. Really, certainly not in writing. And there's another whole part of this, and that is in November, the commissioners passed a new rule that doesn't need unanimity, and that is changing the minimum for a conference to 8 teams. So each league must have 8 teams in order to get an automatic qualifying spot. So that basically, right, means that the Pac-2, as since they only have 2 teams, would not qualify for an automatic qualifying spot, which it would behoove the Pac-12 or Pac-2 to want more at-large spots. And that's where I thought a lot of people on the board would have expected Kirk Schulz to understand. But, at least for now, he's wanting more guarantees, and we'll see where that goes.
Ross, Tennessee is at war with the NCAA. It's about to get really interesting in this. I'm not sure if I kind of feel this way about FSU versus the ACC and this antitrust suit. Maybe it does never come to court, because when it does, there's going to be a lot of people who have to share things that they may not want out there on the record. But how do you see this ending? Do you think that this is the thing that, because it seems like with the Big Ten and SEC thing, that it's prompted more heavy discussion about what the real future is, because the NCAA could spend all of their budget every year investigating people for NIL violations based under their rules. They could spend every second of every day doing it and still not stop it. So they've got to start to be reasonable about it.
Well, this is the case that so many attorneys and sports legal experts predicted what would happen. This is kind of the big case that a year or two ago everybody looked to say, hey, at some point the NCAA enforcement is going to start enforcing these murky, kind of ambiguous NIL guidance or policy, and a school is going to sue. And we're going to see in a court of law if the NCAA's rules hold up, which in many other lawsuits has not been the case, right? The NCAA has not had a lot of success in court. So you can view it as a pretty significant case. And if the restraining order is granted, which could be granted any day, and then beyond that, if a preliminary injunction is granted at a hearing, which is scheduled, I think, for February 13th, you could see for now, at least temporarily, all the NCAA's NIL policies, NIL recruiting bans and prohibitions, restrictions, whatever you want to call them, they'd all be, for now, they'd be gone. They'd be unenforceable. And we all know in the other legal challenge the NCAA is facing over its transfer policy right now, players can transfer unlimited right now without penalty or without waiver. So you could have pretty soon players being able to transfer an unlimited amount and be able to receive NIL inducements in collectives and such, being able to legally tamper maybe as well, if both of these cases kind of go as many believe. So it's again, and this all goes back to the joint effort maybe between the Big Ten and SEC to try to come up with a different model, because the NCAA rules are obviously being challenged in failing.
Ross, one more thing. The SMU story, that they come into the ACC thinking they're going to get that distribution, and now that's still up in the air. Why would anyone sign something if they weren't sure they would get that?
Yeah, so that is another issue that commissioners here in Dallas at the CFB meetings are supposed to be discussing, and that is the Power 5 distribution. The CFP distributes a different number to Group of 5 teams than Power 5 teams. About a Group of 5 schools get about $1 million annually each school from the CFP. Power 5 get about $5.5 to $6 million annually. And a few months ago, I think a segment of commissioners, specifically from the SEC and the Big Ten, decided that schools that elevate from G5 to P5 no longer will get that Power 5 cut, and they'll just get their Group of 5 cut. They'll retain the Group of 5 cut, but they won't. It's basically a moratorium on that. And SMU is kind of the first test case. They were under the impression they would get that cut when they agreed to join the ACC, and now that is somewhat in doubt. Not only that, but even their Group of 5, $1 million annual cut from the CFP is in jeopardy as well.
Hey, Ross, thanks for your time. I know it's a busy, crazy time. Just wait a day and something else will happen. We appreciate it. Ross Dellenger, great to have you with us on yahoosports.com here on 365sports.com.